Welcome everyone to the first of the coffee hours in 2018. We have Mike Morris, who's going to join us around 10:30 or so to talk about what he is planning to do at the SCA for the Fellows training session. And really is to have a conversation with us about what we think would be the most beneficial in terms of time spent if we get together as a group of faculty, new fellows as well as veteran fellows from the different campuses. And this is supposed to be a mini experiential classroom, so he'll be here to talk about that. So the agenda, besides Mike Morris joining us, is to talk about updates from the campuses, brief updates, things that are occurring that you would like to share with the community. And also, I sent out a survey link for the mid-year reports and also a PDF, and we wanted to talk about that a little bit and answer questions if there are any, and also get syllabi updates posted. And I sent out a comprehensive report that IIT put together, and I want to briefly touch on that because there are some questions that popped up in conversations with the foundation, and I wanted to share that and get input from the community. And there are some action items that I wanted to touch on. Veterans and new fellows posting syllabi to the website. The reports, which is besides the survey, if there are other items that you think the community should know about from your campuses, post those to the website. CERs, some CERs post updates and others don't, but I still wanted to mention that so that the directors can facilitate that process, and directors also can post updates. And the next session, coffee hour, is on February 16th, a week before the SCA conference. So that's the agenda for the day. And I'd like to start with the survey that was sent out. This is a mid-year survey. I'm assuming that everybody on the call received it. If there is anyone who did not receive it, let me know. And I think it's self-explanatory, but I still wanted to ask if there are any questions or comments about the survey.
Looks like we're all okay with it.
Yeah, I guess so. And the timeline is still on or before January 31st. I think the intent is to give enough time to collect data. So the key item that I wanted to highlight is a summary of activities. So every fellow in the current cohort, new and veteran fellow, should be working on some aspect of the course that either was modified in the prior year or is being modified currently, as in the case of a new fellow. And we certainly want to see a lot of details about what that course is, if it's going to be taught, or when it will be taught. In the case of veteran fellows, has it been taught before, and what were some of the items that were working, what was not working. And we certainly would like to get more details than less when you fill in that report. And so if you can please go down the list of your cohort and then identify the fellow, the course that they are working with or has worked with in the past, and give us details. And And my recommendation is to type it up as a Word document and then cut and paste it. And the survey Monkey doesn't allow you to save the survey when you're done or when you completed, when you hit submit. It doesn't save a copy for you. So before you submit, you can take screenshots or you can type up your answers and save those. Because I often get requests, okay, can you send me a copy of the survey that I submitted? Which is fine, I'll be happy to do that. But if you preemptively save that information, then there is no need for us to do that. So that's something that I think you may want to keep in mind as you're completing the survey. So let's go to brief updates. So Slew, Jerry, do you have a brief update for us?
Sure, glad to. We are in the midst of our annual series of competitions. Two of them, the new idea generator and the elevator pitch competitions are done. The next one will be the pitch and catch competition. It should be late March, early April. And again, all Coleman schools are welcome to have students apply for it. This one is the pitch deck competition where the students pitch from the pitcher's mound at a local ballpark, and around home plate are 12 to 20 millionaires there to receive the pitch. So I'll send information about that out as we get going. We've actually had opening of 2 new on-campus incubators this past semester, and the fellows are trying to figure out how we can connect our students to them. In terms of progress for the fellows themselves, everyone is getting their classes. Either they were taught in the fall or they're being taught this semester, and everyone seems to be doing a good job, and things are going quite well. We literally just did a program with Keen, where they are now expanding to involve STEM faculty teaching engineering faculty, and they're trying to get the STEM faculty with some exposure to the entrepreneurial mindset model of Keen. And I was asked to come in and talk to them about teaching innovation and entrepreneurship in the class. So that turns out to be an early opportunity to recruit some potential Coleman Fellows for next year. And we had a gathering of the entire Coleman Fellows community and the entrepreneurship teaching team in December, early December, which is one of the things we do. We have a dinner and discussion, and had that was taken over by the fellows, and I just basically signed a check, which seemed to make me, I was happy with that, and the fellows seemed to really enjoy it.
Otherwise, a comment or a question, excuse me, from Clark,
please.
And it could be the audio side, I'm not sure. Clark, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Jerry, you mentioned there are 2 on-campus incubators that have recently opened.
Yes.
Do each of those have a sector focus or a theme?
Oh, no. In fact, the challenge is that the leadership of our university has this idea, if you build it, they will come. So, in fact, the only way you can tell these rooms are different than regular study rooms is based on a suggestion from Tim Hayden and I. The 2 incubators have storage areas, lockable storage areas. Otherwise, you'd say they were just a regular meeting room. The university spent the money to build out the areas and failed to allocate any money for staff. And okay. So that's why the Coleman Fellows are trying to figure out, none of us want to add the university incubator to our list of things we're responsible for. So yeah. We are basically hovering and reminding the university that in a real incubator, there are people there helping the startups move along.
Sure.
Hopefully they will get that message. They also spent about $500,000 to create a competitor to the Tinker Lab, our makerspace on campus, one that was started by Coleman Fellows Condor.
Yep.
And the person they did train someone to do that. It's one of the IT guys who has no IT, he now knows how to clear a clog on the head of a 3D printer, but he has no idea what to do once the kids finish making the product.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Jerry.
So, lots of money, but not probably spent in the smartest way. Aside from that, things are going pretty well. The fellows are in good shape. And I have a question probably going forward, which is what is the, say, general outline of the plan for the fellows program for next year? And Clark, if I suspect you're probably the person to answer that. Do we expect to be doing more or less what we were doing this year, next year?
I think at present, Jerry, that's probably a good assumption to make. No firm decisions have been made, but I don't think we've had any indication that there would be a radical change to the program.
I will work my campus accordingly then. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, UNCG?
Okay, hi. Happy New Year. I have a new grandson. That's the big story in my life, and so I'm very excited about that. And he was born December 16th, so since our last Coleman webinar here. What we're doing at UNCG is we have managed to get the minor online. The entrepreneurship minor will be offered online starting fall. And so we are doing hybrid, so it's going to be online as well as face-to-face. And that will be offered for non-business majors as well as business majors. So it will basically be open to the whole campus. We're one course away from getting the major online. I'm just lacking the entrepreneurial finance course, and I'm working on getting that taken care of. So that's really exciting. We have our luncheon on Friday where we bring all the Entrepreneurship Cross-Disciplinary Program Fellows together, our veterans as well as our new people, and that'll be next week. We're really excited about that. Noah Reynolds has covered how many NOAA classes? You have 5 or 6 class visits scheduled already for this year, this semester?
I think I did 8 in the fall, and I've got 5 scheduled already for the spring.
Okay, and he's also going to be doing some inserts on video for our online classes, as we have quite a number of new online classes that are cross-listed in entrepreneurship. We have our 3 new fellows here, and all 3 of them will be having their classes available in the fall that are cross-listed. Visual Performing Arts and Entrepreneurship and Arts Administration will be a 200 level class, and we're just talking about maybe doing a business model in that so they prepare for the feasibility analysis class of 300 because that's required in that program. That'll be offered in the fall. That's a face-to-face, and that's new. And Tamaki is with us, and she's going to have a cross-listed course in political science and entrepreneurship about entrepreneurship and government. And that is going to be an online class, and that's at the 300 level. Deborah Holzberg's here, and she is going to have an online class in special education and entrepreneurship, and it is about
transition. So transition in school-based enterprises as a model for teaching students with disabilities.
So we're really excited about that, and actually the idea is that they would start these businesses in the schools they go out to, which could be high schools, grade schools.
Yeah, it would be high schools.
High schools. So we're excited about that, and just for the people on the phone call, The Freedom Foundation has an award called the, it's basically a free enterprise award, and it's for any educators. It could be college level as well as K through 12, that's actually putting entrepreneurship and free enterprise concepts in their classes and projects and stuff. And then they actually give a stipend of $7,500 to the educator. Some of the educators use it in their programs, some of them keep it. And also they fly you out for a major annual conference, and you workshop and you work together, and then they have a big banquet. So it's really a great program. It was funded originally by the founder of Farmers Insurance because he didn't think educators were getting enough credibility. And as a past award winner, Mike Morris is an award winner, I'm an award winner of that. I feel that not enough people know about that award, and I just wanted to bring that up. So if you Google Freedoms Foundation, you'll see about the award, and I really encourage people to take a look at that and maybe apply. But what Deborah's doing fits that award perfectly, and so I really want to bring that up. Steve, what else do we have?
We have our company residence, Noah, taking a group of students to CEO this spring. Correct, Noah?
Yes, in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Cool. Like you did last year. Like
yeah, in the fall.
Yeah. I'm teaching my research class, typically small as usual, but I have my first-time sociology student who's a master's student, and also a media studies student among the usual mix of students. So I'm looking forward to working with these students on research skills this semester.
And that's an
Steve, there is a question or a comment from Clark.
Go ahead, Clark.
Yeah, sorry, and Joe, you don't have to interrupt going forward. I can ask him at the end. First of all, Diane, congratulations on your grandson. Secondly, given our funding interest, Deborah's course, sounds to be of particular interest. So that's something that's going to be taught in the fall. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And where is the course development process right now? Is the syllabus kind of outlined, or how are we in the process of developing the course?
Working on the syllabus. Basically, it'll be the principles of secondary transition for students with disabilities, and then with a focus on school-based enterprise as a way to give, for pre-service teachers to, when they get in the classroom, to provide students with disabilities opportunities to practice skills, valuable skills, in their natural setting. So in some sort of a workplace environment that hopefully will be generalized to the workplace when they exit out of their secondary setting.
Gotcha. Great. I think we would love to stay closely connected to that course as it's developed, Deborah, and learn a little bit more, about your intentions and what it looks like when it's crafted. So maybe, Diane, you can help us at the appropriate time to, to chat.
Yeah, Clark, and maybe we can set up something offline on that. And Deborah's already sent through the form you have to do for new courses, and it's been approved by ENT as well as SES, and so it's in the process. I do want to bring up that Deborah also helped us with the cross-listed ENT BUS 206 Start Something class, which is a real basic class, and we have about half the class with our Beyond Academic students with intellectual and physical challenges in that class with the regular business students. And she was very helpful in helping us with some materials so that when we talk about, for instance, business pitches, they don't think we're going to throw a ball, which I never thought about that until she said it. And I'm like, oh, I get it now, And so she helped us a lot with the language we were using in that class, and that was very successful. We did have
maybe, Diane, when the special ed and entrepreneurship course is in a form where you might be able to share it with me, would you mind reaching out and maybe we can schedule some time?
Sure.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, UNCG. Let's go to ISU and caller number 8 is somebody joined in on the audio side. Can you identify yourself, please?
It's Georgianne. I'm at USASB, so I'm trying to double task on everything. So
thank you, Georgianne. Glad you can join us. Okay, so let's get another quick update from IIT, and then we go to ISU and WPI, and then by that time we should have Mike Morris on the call with us. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, great. So we have a one of our Coleman Fellows is at USASB along with another one of our professors. So we'll planning to get a debrief from them and share it with the rest of the Coleman Fellows and community. We've got one of our Coleman Fellows is right now has a Friday class this semester, so couldn't join us, but he's the one, Jeremy Hajek, who's doing a lot of really interesting work with his VR and AR lab, and that's getting a lot of attention, bringing in some more grants, and that's really exciting going forward. We're integrating more and more into the overall entrepreneurial ecosystem here, both internally at IIT, and the big story there, of course, is the Kaplan Institute that'll be opening in November. So we're planning for the grand opening there, and we're working with the Entrepreneurship Academy Council to develop sort of the broader coordination among all of the pieces and parts that we have here. So that's in process. And then let's see, we just finished our Chicago Innovation Challenge competition that had high school and colleges, universities around, primarily in the Chicago region, and I think we're going to expand that. Then I guess the last big news that we're working on will be hopefully everybody joining us at the Global Consortium of Entrepreneurship Centers, the GCEC, October 25th to 27th. That's co-sponsored and co-hosted by IIT and DePaul. So we're looking to probably have 500 plus people there. I think it's easy for most people to get to Chicago if they're not already here. And then we've got a couple other programs going on. We'll have some conversation later on today about our integration into the iPro program, which our CER, William Penn, is leading. And we should have more of an update on that next time. So,
great. Thanks, Nick. Let's go to WPI and then ISU.
Okay. Jerry mentioned how SLU was moving forward with their grant from the Kern Foundation and the Keene Project, and we have the same thing here at WPI, and they've got our grant from them is about $2 million, and so they've got a lot of money to do a lot of things, and they just put on a workshop right before classes started earlier this month, and had about 60 or 70 people in attendance. I was blown away that that before spring classes started, they could get that kind of turnout for an entrepreneurship education training program. So that's going really well, and that's come directly out of Coleman because the director of the Keene project here is veteran fellow Glenn Gaudette. One of our fellows who gave a report to you in the fall, you may remember Vijay Manzo in music talking about the new course that he was developing. He's not here today because his department is in fact voting on that new course right now. So he's over there to make sure that goes through, and assuming that gets approved by the department, he's going to prepare a grant to the university to get some internal money for startup funds for his students to develop new ventures out of the course. And right, Gina's mentioning that we helped with that proposal, and both Gina and I are actually going to be guest lecturers at his class in later this spring. Susie Weeks, our fellow in mathematical sciences, is co-directing a national effort to prepare thousands of mathematical sciences students at more than 100 universities for industrial careers. And of course, she's building some entrepreneurship training into that. It's called the Preparation for Industrial Careers in Mathematical Sciences, PIC, the acronym PIC Math. We are moving forward on spreading entrepreneurship and or innovation entrepreneurship across campus, and actually recruiting a director for that who will report directly to the president of WPI, and initial candidates for that are going to be interviewed later this month and early in February. So we should have essentially a new entity in place to oversee the entrepreneurship education spreading in programs outside of the School of Business. Marcia Rowley in biomedical engineering is in the process of developing an entire graduate program that's going to be focusing on preparing the biomedical engineering students for entrepreneurial careers. And this comes out of a grant that we had received earlier from the National Science Foundation. But that experimental program had terrific results, so the faculty is on board to make it a permanent program. Stephen Van Dessel in architectural engineering introduced entrepreneurship to his students in an intro to architectural engineering class in the fall. He built in an entrepreneurial component where essentially the students were presented with a problem to develop concepts for using additive manufacturing for construction, and then they had to give a pitch for starting their venture out of the new concept they developed in a competition at the end of the course.
Cool.
Jennifer DeWinter has, we just posted her revised syllabus on the website for visual rhetoric, and so she's built an entrepreneurship exercise into that for her students to plant the idea in their minds. So I think there are a bunch of other things going on, but I think that kind of captures it in a summary fashion at this time, and I'll be sending you more information.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks for the update. ISU?
Hello, everyone. This is Mark Holter, Illinois State University. Very quickly, we're making some strides, and we're really excited. We're moving forward on two fronts, high school involvement and then moving our interdisciplinary minor across campus. And I think we have some metrics that show some success. So we started a program this year celebrating high school innovators. It's Illinois-wide, and that went very well, and we'll have a final Shark Tank-style event April the 7th and 8th, I think. Startup Showcase was in November of this year, and the most important thing about that was our teams increased both in breadth and number. We went from 16 to 26 contestants teams, and they were from all over campus. And our grand prize winner actually came from the College of Education, which was quite cool, we thought. There are conversations now, and we are involved in those, about an incubator space and some maker space. Those are university-wide, so we're proud to be a part of that voice, and we'll see how that all turns out. And then finally, in our updates, our interdisciplinary minor, so we're codifying and making firm some of our movements forwards and trying to make them permanent. That is through the first of the curriculum processes. It has two more to go through before it is an actual minor for interdisciplinary studies. But basically, we're already teaching the three courses that are involved in that. The entrepreneurial mindset is one of them. Entrepreneurship for non-business majors is another. And then basic business concepts is a third one. And those are for students from all across campus. And not necessarily in the College of Business, and those have been fully subscribed every semester. The only one that we haven't taught before is the basic business concepts, and that one's coming online this April. So very quickly, that's our update. Pretty pleased with the way we're going.
And Mark, I do have some questions for you about the makerspace, but we'll talk about it. Georgianne, do you have a quick update for?
The biggest thing that we've got is our milestone class, which is a class just for sophomores, and it filled, so we added another section. Sean Flanagan and I are putting it together. It's an entrepreneurial mindset. It's sophomores from all different majors, so it's going to be a great recruiting tool into all our Coleman Fellows classes and entrepreneurship minor or certificate. Been great at USASB. We got to talk with Alex Bruton, using a lot of his material as well as some other stuff, so it's been great. And our Mentor Mondays are going great. Still working on that, and I think all our fellows are kind of getting a grip on what they need to do, so we're set to go for this semester. That's all.
Thanks, Georgianne. Have a great conference.
Okay.
Mike, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay. You may, I don't know about others, but you're coming in a little faint, so you may want to lean in, if you don't mind, into the mic a little bit when you speak.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So thanks for joining us, Mike. The main reason to have Mike join us today is he agreed to help us with the mini version of experiential classroom training at the SCA conference. We are missing a few schools. Some of them are at USASB, others maybe just not back on campus. So there are, at this time, I have an estimate of 16 fellows attending the SCA conference in February. And the conference, the SCA conference, for those of you who are familiar with it, starts at noon on Friday and then ends at 4 o'clock on Saturday. So it's 23rd and 24th of February. And Mike agreed to help us by coming in to do a training session for the fellows, especially those schools that did not have a chance to send anyone to the experiential classroom, starting in the morning on the 23rd and ends around maybe 3 o'clock or so. We haven't finalized the exact timeline, but that's sort of the time frame you're working with. And then those fellows who can stay back and be part of the conference. And it's a good opportunity for also some of the faculty, like schools from like nearby schools like ISU and SLU, to bring the students along with the faculty. So rather than saying, okay, here's what the training is going to be, we sort of have a set of ideas that I think would work. But Mike has some ideas on what he thinks would work. But we wanted to hear from the community and see what some of the burning questions that would help get answered by the expert trainer we have in Mike Morris, who's done this for a number of years, in addition to the brain power we have in the system. So that's the purpose of having him on the call. So with that, I'd like to give the floor to Mike so he can do a brief intro and then we can have a conversation.
Thanks, Joe. So the experiential classroom, if you're not familiar with it, is a rather intense 3-day clinic that features best practices in teaching entrepreneurship and developing entrepreneurship programs. We accept 75 delegates each year. The Coleman Fellows have been represented for a number of years. We bring in 24 of the master educators in the field of entrepreneurship. Somebody mentioned Alex Bruton. Alex is one of our presenters, but it's sort of a tour de force in terms of exposure to best practices, to cool approaches, to introducing creativity and the entrepreneurial process and developing experiential approaches to learning. So Joe asked if I would do a sort of adaptation of the experiential classroom at the conference that's coming up, and I'm happy to do that. But it would be helpful to get input from you in terms of some of the more pressing things you struggle with when it comes to teaching entrepreneurial concepts and principles, frameworks, tools, the entrepreneurial mindset. What kinds of focus would be especially helpful to you as you integrate entrepreneurship into what you're doing? So my hope was to get some open feedback if you have any.
Hi, this is Hannah Graneman. I'm an assistant professor in arts administration here at University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Diane suggested we were talking about this before the conference call started, and Diane suggested I ask this question, especially to Mike Morris. So I'm teaching arts administration and students on how to run arts organizations and run entrepreneurial arts businesses. Mike, I'd love to hear you talk about what you see as the difference between really an entrepreneurial approach and a regular business management approach.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I find that, you know, in working with arts and entrepreneurship initiatives at different universities, there needs to be kind of a balance between you're dealing with students that have typically no business exposure, and so how much are you teaching business and how much are you teaching entrepreneurial concepts and principles? And so the difference between those two, you know, one would be marketing for an arts organization, while the other would be what's the entrepreneurial mindset and how does it manifest itself? And how do you try to teach a mindset? How do you teach opportunity recognition? How do you encourage students to leverage resources or do more with less and use resources they don't own? And so I find there's a need to balance the two. My initial sort of, when I first did some of this with arts educators, was to focus exclusively on the entrepreneurial side, and there's sort of, well, we need a little bit more of the business as well. And so that's how I approach it. And that's certainly something we can spend some time on in the session at the conference. It's sort of I don't mean to elaborate too much, but it's sort of the distinction between, we've done a lot of work on competencies and the development of entrepreneurial competencies by people in all walks of life, and it's sort of the distinction between entrepreneurial competencies and managerial competencies. So understanding cash flow is a managerial competency that any manager needs to master, whereas issues related to how do I recognize and evaluate opportunities, how do I generate resources when I don't have any resources, are more purely entrepreneurial.
What are some of the challenges that you see on campus with fellows teaching different subject matters?
Joe, it's Georgianne here.
Go ahead, Georgianne.
Yeah, I mean, I love what he just said. I think that showing that distinction is going to be really great for a lot of the non-business faculty that just got involved, because that's what they're trying to deal with. Is it the tools, the practical side of running a business, or is it the entrepreneurship side? And I think they struggle with that a bit. I find most of my non-business or my fellows are really good at a lot of the practical side for their own disciplines, because a lot of them are practicing that teaching students to think entrepreneurially. I think it's going to be a really good lesson for them to learn, and the distinction between, so they can focus on their classes and what they're doing. I think this will be great. We're going to probably send 5 people, I think.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Georgianne. When Mike and I talked earlier about this, my conversation sort of powered around the concepts. We still have a lot of, I guess, lack of clarity, if you would, in how you build a lesson plan around teaching opportunity recognition in architectural technology or graphic design or dance. There is a lot of information from the fellows community and experiences, but there is still this lingering question. Okay, how do I, as a new fellow or as a veteran fellow, improve on my techniques of teaching entrepreneurship concepts? We have an opportunity to rehash some of those things, but also have Mike's experience with the Experiential Classroom bring to bear some of the things that he has seen over the years as being successful. So certainly the hope is that we will have enough of a, I guess, focused conversation around certain lesson plans and classroom activities and things like that. Clark, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I guess in absence of other questions, I don't want to crowd out any other questions, but if there aren't any, I wanted to kind of suggest an area for contemplation, and maybe this is something that is important to the community, maybe it's not. So this is not kind of a foundation gotta know type of question. But as we look at the work of fellows, you know, I know, Joe, you've used the phrase the infusion method, you know, to describe what a lot of fellows are doing. It's, you know, taking entrepreneurship education concepts and embedding them in their course taught in their discipline, in the vernacular of their discipline. And so part of the questions that we have here is, when you think of kind of the limited, you know, time that you have in class over the course of a semester or a quarter, how much entrepreneurship, quote-unquote, content can be embedded? And is there a minimal amount of content that's necessary to really make this an effective exercise? Some of the examples we've heard this morning are full integrations, it sounds like, of entrepreneurship into a course in the discipline, but we know that in a lot of instances, you're only going to have a couple class periods or a more limited amount of time. So as a fellow thinks about how to, you know, take quote-unquote entrepreneurship concepts and effectively integrate them into their course in the discipline, in the vernacular, how do we think about how much is necessary to really have an impact? Do we think about that in kind of modules, or how do we kind of explore that and help fellows to understand here are, you know, bigger and larger ways to transform your course in a meaningful way?
Great question. Mike, do you have any thoughts? I'll chime in if I...
Yeah, and I'm not looking for an answer necessarily today, but if that's something that the community would find value in, maybe at SEA that's something to explore.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the approach that we generally argue for is consistent with what Clark said. It's a module-based approach, and so one of the things I'm hoping to share with folks at the conference is we've designed 7 of these modules that can be dropped into courses and adapted to, whether it's architectural engineering or graphic design or art course. And so that is a different approach, and I'll show other approaches, but the module-based approach is the most flexible in terms of, okay, so here's a module on opportunity recognition, and here's where you can drop in content that's discipline specific, so you can adapt the module to that content. But clearly there are other approaches.
Great. Well, I was hoping to hear, oh, wait, let me see here. UNCG had a comment or a question.
Yeah, hi, Mike. This is Noah Reynolds with UNC Greensboro. I'm the entrepreneur in residence, but I also teach the feasibility class. I was interested in maybe if I could get a copy of your architectural engineering module. I do commercial real estate as well, and I actually spoke in the interior architecture class back in the fall and used an adaptive reuse of a project that I did where I turned a 1925 home into a commercial office that was historic, and would be interested to see what the architecture module that you had developed was, if you could maybe send that to Dr. Welsh.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't sufficiently clear. The modules that we have are entrepreneurial modules that can be dropped into an architectural engineering course or other courses. And so the
Correct,
module's
yes.
content is more focused on the entrepreneurial principles and tools. The instructor can then adapt it to the particular artistic or otherwise course.
Yes, I understand that. If I was going to speak in that class again, I'd want to try to adapt my one-day presentation more to the module that you've designed.
Yeah. So I have modules on opportunity recognition, on creativity, creative problem solving, on risk mitigation techniques for managing risks, resource leveraging, guerrilla skills. I think there's 7 of them that we have that are done, and I'm happy to share them.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, Mike, this is Clark again. Can I ask you, on those modules, are you able to articulate the amount of contact hours that are required to effectively teach those modules? Is there a range of those, roughly?
I can specify that. It's meant to be adaptable, so it would be a range, but so doing it in a single, hour and 15-minute lecture versus doing it over 3 classes. Part of it is going to be tied, Clark, to building in activities or exercises beyond the content.
Sure.
On how much one wants to do that, but I certainly can try to specify a range of class time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Question or comment from ISU?
Hi, Joe. This is Paul Weaver, CER at ISU. Something for Mr. Morris. It's something that I come across that I see in some of the classes that I visit and so on and so forth is the difference between being entrepreneurial and an entrepreneur. And the fact that not all higher learning institutions, colleges, junior colleges, high school level do not promote and or entertain the concept of a difference between those two, and how some people can be entrepreneurial but not really know what being an entrepreneur and the differences are. I was just curious if he's come across that same type of different issues in his curriculum.
Well, it's an involved question, but so we still have a lot of faculty that teach entrepreneurship, and they will stand up and say, well, most students have no business being an entrepreneur, or aren't going to be entrepreneurs, or whatever. I don't buy that. I mean, I think we have 50,000 students on the Florida campus, and I believe all 50,000 of them could do entrepreneurial things. And so those things may not be, formal or high growth ventures, but it's entrepreneurial activities, it's entrepreneurial ventures that take a lot of different forms. But I think the notion of the entrepreneurial mindset, which I think is what you're talking about, as opposed to being to starting and running a business, is an important distinction. There are a lot of students that aren't going to start and run a business, but the issue of so if we have a student who lives in an apartment complex and he can design and implement a recycling program that's used throughout the apartment complex, to me, that's an entrepreneurial venture. And so that's what we're trying to encourage, that kind of behavior, both attitudinally and behaviorally. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I guess I'm going to give an example. Most kids that I've met don't understand that if you want to work a 40-hour work week, you really can't be an entrepreneur. The definition of an entrepreneur is typically working twice that many hours. And finding the distinction of where the kids are, and I'm not saying that being entrepreneurial is any less of a person than an actual entrepreneur, but I think if you get to that distinction early, you can find out if a person needs to be part of a team of entrepreneurial people, or if that person is actually going to follow the path of being an entrepreneur and working 80 to 100 hours a week.
Yeah, no, I certainly take your point, and I think it's a very legitimate point. I think there are a lot of students that are, you know, I mean, there are a lot of artists that spend 80 or 90 hours a week on their art, and they're just as impassioned, and they have just as much work ethic with regard to their art as an entrepreneur does with a startup. But to the extent that a student is ready to pay the price, not just in terms of time and work ethic, but all the other requirements of starting and growing a business, and or the extent to which they need to think of it more from a team standpoint, I certainly think is a legitimate issue, and is an issue one confronts all the time with students. And I think one needs to clearly convey the rigors and discipline necessary to, you know, to start sustainable enterprises, businesses, while at the same time trying to make tools and concepts related to entrepreneurial behavior accessible to students that are going to pursue other paths, whether that's engaging in entrepreneurial behavior inside established organizations, whether it's social entrepreneurship or some other form of activity.
Thank you, Dr. Morris.
I think there was a comment from Jerry. Okay, Jerry, please go ahead.
Thanks. One of the things, there's an approach I use, and when I'm teaching an experiential classroom, is one of the things that pops up in what we're doing. What we're trying to teach, or the model we use here at SLU, is that we're trying to teach CSI entrepreneurship, corporate, social, and independent. And the fact is that we believe that entrepreneurial thinking is useful for people in all sorts of settings, whether you're working for yourself or working for someone else or working for a nonprofit or even government. And this kind of got built up from all the times I get sent to talk during campus visits, and the parents of students who are considering an entrepreneurial career usually have a tough question, which is, well, how does taking an entrepreneurship major, minor, or entrepreneurship in their class or in their art program help them in the real world? And what I come back to them is, all right, if you're looking for a job somewhere, are the companies that you're going to hire your kids going to be interested in children who are more innovative or less innovative? More bottom line focused or less bottom line focused, more big picture focused or less big picture focused, more customer focused or less customer focused. And they look at me and say, well, they want kids with more of all of those things. That is what we teach in entrepreneurship. And in a lot of cases, we're really the only part of the university and even the business school that really focuses on those elements. So when we talk about this entrepreneurial mindset is valuable to people regardless of what they're doing, because in the modern world, these companies want workers who are, in most important ways, entrepreneurial. Most of the time, the parents' fears subside from that, but it also is a good model for the fellows to use to think about what are we trying to do and why. Going back to the question, if you let me go back to the question about teaching students in the arts, part of what this is students in the arts are less driven by profit a lot of the time. So instead of talking about profit, we're talking about having the resources that let you pursue your art. buy more canvas, spend more time, or buy a new, a new camera, things like that. We talk about it's, in part, it's developing your vision, but to be happy with what you're doing, you also want to find people who like your vision. And that suddenly gets student artists thinking about, okay, how do I find people to share my art with who would appreciate it? And that's what marketing becomes, that search and things like that. So that what we're trying to teach is not antithetical to the way students in the arts or people who are outside of the business school think, but it's a matter of basically thinking about the language they use and restating what we believe to be useful and true in a form that fits with what they're trying to do.
Thanks, Jerry, because I think it is true that parents and potential students bring you down to reality real quick when you're in front of those groups. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm interested in learning more about your CSI. You mentioned corporate, social, individual, in terms of how that translates into the curriculum elements that some of the fellows at SLU are working on.
Well, actually, the stuff is out of the textbook. So
okay, great.
That's what you know. All the fellows here get a copy of the textbook as they start out, so that gets everyone on the same page. But glad to answer any questions you have.
Great, thanks. WPI, please go ahead.
Mike, I don't have any questions for you. I just want to say, you know, I've been sending faculty from all kinds of disciplines to you for over 20 years, and you've made a big difference. And, you know, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate the work that you've done through the experiential classroom. You know, faculty that I've sent through there years ago still talk about, you know, what it's meant to them and how it's influenced their teaching. My associate director, Gina Betty, is here, and she's been through the experiential classroom, and she's got a comment.
Yeah, I do. One of the things when I used to do student orientations many years ago for the entrepreneurship program is if a parent was in the room and, you know, what is an entrepreneur? What can they do with this education? And I would always pull out the deck of cards, pick a card. You know, they can be self-employed and support a lifestyle that they're comfortable in. They can buy a business through learning how to acquisition, education, figure that out, or go to work for an M&A firm. They can have a business that they grow into a gazelle business, the next IBM or Facebook, what have you. They can invent, and then they can license and patent technology and put products and services and processes into society. So I think just having the ability for faculty who do not teach business course to understand that there are, 5, 6, 7, a dozen different pathways that a student could take as an entrepreneur, that it puts the mind to ease in terms of, geez, I have a lot of choices here. I don't need to do one thing or the other.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Frank, thanks so much for your kind comments. The fellows are just a great addition to the experiential classroom. They bring a richness, and obviously we do a number of sessions that focus on, especially on entrepreneurship across the campus. But really, especially coming from you, Frank, that means a lot.
Amen to that, Mike. I think we have had rave reviews about faculty we send to experiential classrooms. So thanks for all the work that you do with that. So I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the 23rd February training timeline, and Mike is agreed to help us with this. So we are thinking about assembling everybody at 8 a.m., which means fellows who are coming to the ACA special session, or pre-conference, if you would, training would assemble. They need to get there on Thursday evening on the 22nd, so we can start bright and early at 8 a.m. on the 23rd. And my understanding is Mike is doing a training piece or a combination of group and other activities between 8 and noon, and then we break for lunch, and then we continue after lunch after sort of a assignment or a group activity that'll be ending around 2:30 or 3 o'clock. And Mike, is that still okay with your with the way you're thinking about this training?
Yeah, Joe, that sounds good. What I had in mind, and obviously the hope is to modify it based on feedback here, but to spend the morning on the modules, content, frameworks, tools, that sort of thing. And the model I had in mind was a morning that's rich in frameworks, tools, concepts, the substantive kind of things, the modules and how they can be delivered. And what I was hoping to do in the session right after lunch is to then introduce a number of really different alternative kinds of experiential approaches and then bring into play some of the experiential approaches that are being used by the fellows.
Yeah, I think there isn't too much of feedback in terms of actual training and how that timeline is going to work from this group. I think the timeline we described, I think, works overall. Let me ask you a different question, Mike. Is there a critical mass in terms of fellows that you'd like to see? Because I think we have close to 15 to 16. I am going to recommend that we not go over maybe 24, 25. There's also budget issues related to this. But so if we have, let's say we end up with about 16 faculty, that is kind of the number that we would work with. The number doesn't matter to you, correct?
It doesn't. I think 16 sounds ideal, but 10 to 25, anything like that would work well with what I want to do.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike, for your time this morning. I'll reach back out to you if there are any questions that pop up. Otherwise, we'll talk offline sometime next week.
Great, Joe. Thanks. It's a pleasure meeting everybody, and I hope to see some of you in Illinois. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
A couple of things that I wanted to run by the community or the group. One of the questions that popped up after we reviewed the report with the foundation is the CER part of the survey identified some, I would say, strengths, but also areas of improvement. And one thing that seemed to pop out is the engagement of the CERs with the faculty fellows and the students. From all indications, CERs filled out surveys and they said, we certainly are interested in spending time with fellows as co-teachers, as helping them create lesson plans and a number of things. But then the survey results from students and fellows sort of indicated something different. And I wanted to get some thoughts from some of the folks on the call as to, do you see on your campus a disconnect, or is there a way, are we missing some information from the surveys? What are your thoughts on this? Because there seems to be a sort of a disconnect between what is happening on campus and what's happening, what the survey indicates or the results indicate. ISU, please go ahead.
So I guess that the way I would view it, there's heavy involvement in the application and the carrying out of the curriculum, and a lot of input in terms of the understanding the spirit of the curriculum, but not so much in terms of designing the curriculum, because that's not our CER's strength. So we might have answered that question in a way different than you expected us to answer it. Our CER doesn't design curriculum. He certainly influences our outcomes and what we're trying to do, and he's heavily involved in all that we do, but we design the curriculum because that's simply not what our CER does. And I would expect anybody that's practicing and not in the educational environment would sort of steer clear of designing and developing curriculum. But I could be wrong, and so we might have answered that question wrong. Maybe we interpreted it a little bit wrong.
That's a good point, Mark. Maybe the way the question was constructed was not very clear. But yeah, I also want to be clear. I'm not expecting. I don't think there is any intention or expectation that the CERs would actually create curriculum in all cases. But we have a number of CERs who are teaching and who are co-teaching on campuses. So maybe it's a mixed sort of reaction from different schools. So there is a comment or a question from UNCG.
Diane and Noah, let our CER speak also, but I agree with Mark. I interpreted the question as they were designing the curriculum. Our CER is taught since 2010 in our program, is very effective, very involved, engaged, teaches a class every year, but he doesn't design the curriculum. We design it as PhDs, and then, you know, they teach it and put great materials in it that they bring. But I interpreted that question, Joe, because it said the word design and we're academics filling the survey out. I assumed you were talking about creating or modifying classes and all the forms that we have to do at universities and stuff. So I agree with Mark. I think that's probably why you're getting a different answer. I'm going to turn it to Noah.
Yeah, Joe, I wanted to reiterate that as an entrepreneur in residence who's a practicing entrepreneur and also teaching a class, I sort of got one foot in both spaces. And in terms of teaching a class, I'm teaching, you know, Dr. Welsh teaches the same class in the fall that I teach in the spring, so I'm using the same book and format and everything that she's teaching, and it's been consistent year after year. When I'm going to speak in other classes across campus, like I said, I've done 8 in the fall and I'm scheduling 5 for the spring. What I'm typically doing is trying to reach out to the professors at the beginning of the semester to find out what week or what module within their syllabus that I could fit into, and then try to work with them for that one class session to sort of custom tailor or design what aspect of their module that they've already designed into their syllabus that I could augment or help assist with. So there is some going back and forth with the creation of that one particular class visit. It's usually a full class period of either, 45 minutes or an hour and 15, and I've got some flexibility in what I particularly present, but it's embedded within whatever module they've dedicated to entrepreneurship, and that's why I was most interested in getting the 7 modules from Mike Morris so that I could have some better tools to integrate with professors from across campus and lots of disciplines in designing that 1 hour and 15 minutes that I've got in a class. I hope that helps.
That helps. So maybe it's something that we have to revisit. Maybe we'll get some clarification on this when we do a year-end report on the CERs and what they do. So, and also the engagement level. So there is some lack of clarity on that. So I'll send out a email for some input from some. Maybe we should have some offline conversations also. So I'll reach out to you and Diane. Thank you very much. So there was a question about foundation support for fellows attending the SCA conference. To be honest with you, I have not had a chance to talk to Clark about this. But I think there is some foundation support for registration and some hotel expenses. And maybe what if I do this? The question came from SLU. And Jerry, what if I do this? I'll talk to Clark, and I have not had a chance to talk about this. Why don't we? We'll do that. Clark and I can discuss this, and then I'll send out an email to the community in the next few days.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Just as an update, we are working closely with Amy Rogers, who's the director of the SCA conference, and she is expecting that some of the fellows may also bring some students. So, and she has a separate pool of dollars to support student participation at the conference. And if you are bringing students, please take a look at the website, and there are some scholarships available through the website. And I think the sources of funds comes from Coleman and some other sources as well. So, especially those campuses that traditionally bring students. I know, Jerry, for example, SLU has brought fellows bring students to the conference. I know ISU does, and other schools do. So I just wanted to mention that. So there is some support. I don't know the exact levels of support, but we will get back to you on that. Okay, and there are some questions in the mid-year survey that I mentioned. I know there are no concerns or questions at this time. So if there is anything that pops up after we are done with this call, feel free to email me. And there are a couple of questions about CER engagement that may shed more light to the kind of result that we found from the IIT survey. Okay, any other comments or suggestions or thoughts about any of the topics we discussed? Okay. So our next coffee hour is on the 16th of February, and this is for all community fellows, directors, and CERs, and associate directors. So between now and the end of the month, please complete the survey. It's due on or before January 31st. And also, please take some time to encourage your new and veteran fellows to post their syllabi to the website. The website has been, we are constantly tweaking the website based on the security issues that come up. But if there is any issue with any of the posting, please let me know, and I'm happy to help you with any of that if that becomes necessary. But I do want you to have your fellows and yourself post and try to post. And if there is any issues, I would prefer that you send me some details rather than saying it's not working. Tell me what is not working or what is not working on your end, more so than general statements, so I can specifically address those issues. And CERs also can post their updates. Some CERs do, some don't. Again, it's strongly recommended that each CER post their updates to the website. And that's it. That's all I had for the day in terms of our conversation points. So I'll be following up with some emails on some of the items that are pending from the conversation. And have a great rest of the day.